The silver gift box sat in the center of our living room coffee table, wrapped with the kind of precision that should have been my first warning. Justin had never been good at wrapping presents. Usually, I'd find my gifts in crumpled department store bags with the receipt still inside. But here it was, on my 28th birthday, looking like something out of a magazine. "Open it!" Sarah squealed from across the room, raising her wine glass. The apartment was packed with our friends, people from work, college buddies, neighbors from our building. The string lights I'd hung that morning cast a warm glow over everyone's faces. I'd spent 3 days planning this party, cooking Justin's favorite foods, making sure we had enough of that craft beer he loved. Justin stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, that strange, distant look he'd been wearing for weeks clouding his features. "Go ahead, Audrey," he said, his voice flat. "Everyone's waiting." My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the box. Not from excitement, no, something else entirely. That morning, I'd taken a pregnancy test, 3 of them actually, all positive. I'd planned to tell Justin after everyone left, when it was just us, curled up on this same couch, where we'd spent 5 years building our life together. The ribbon came undone easily, too easily. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, wasn't jewelry or concert tickets or any of the things Justin usually surprised me with. It was a single piece of paper, folded once. "Read it out loud," someone shouted. I think it was Tom from Justin's work. I unfolded the note, and the words hit me like ice water. "I'm leaving you. You're useless. This relationship is over. I'll be back for my things next week." The room went silent, not the gradual fade of conversation dying down, but an instant, suffocating silence like someone had pressed mute on the entire world. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me, then at Justin, then back at me. "Is this?" Maria started to say something from her spot by the kitchen, but her voice cracked. She grabbed her purse suddenly. "I'm not feeling well. I have to go." She practically ran for the door, her heels clicking against my hardwood floors we'd picked out together at Home Depot, arguing playfully about whether to go with oak or cherry. Justin walked past me without a word, grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, the hook I'd installed myself because he never got around to it, and left. The door clicked shut with a finality that seemed to echo through my bones. Sarah was the first to move, rushing to my side, but I couldn't feel her arms around me. I couldn't feel anything except the note in my hands and the secret growing inside me that Justin would never know about. Not tonight, maybe not ever. "Audrey, honey, say something," Sarah whispered. But what could I say? That 2 hours ago, I'd been practicing how to tell him he was going to be a father? That I'd already started a Pinterest board for nursery ideas? That just last week he'd been talking about proposing, showing me rings on his phone? I stood up slowly, placed the note back in the box, and smiled. It wasn't a real smile. It was the smile you wear when you're bleeding internally but don't want to stain anyone else's clothes. "Well," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I guess the party's over." The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. I'd spent the night on the bathroom floor, not from morning sickness but from the kind of grief that makes you physically ill. Sarah had stayed, God bless her, sleeping on the couch and periodically checking on me with glasses of water and sleeves of crackers. "You need to eat something," she said around 7 a.m., standing in the bathroom doorway. "For the baby, if not for yourself." The baby. Right. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten that my body was currently building another human being, Justin's human being. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. "How did you know?" I asked, accepting a piece of toast. "The 3 pregnancy test boxes in your trash can were a pretty big clue," she said, sitting down next to me on the cold tile. "Were you going to tell him last night?" I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. "That bastard," she muttered. "The timing. Audrey, do you think he knew?" "No," I said quickly, then slower, "I don't know. Maybe. He's been weird lately, distant, working late, but I thought it was just stress from his promotion." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I'm calling in sick for both of us. We're going to figure this out." By noon, we'd moved from the bathroom to the living room. I'd managed to shower and change into fresh pajamas. Small victories. The apartment felt different without Justin's presence, like a tooth had been pulled and my tongue kept finding the empty space. His gaming setup was still in the corner. His coffee mug, the one that said, "World's okayest boyfriend" that I'd gotten him as a joke, still sat by the sink. 5 years of accumulated couples debris surrounded me. The throw pillows we'd picked out together, the photos on the wall from our trip to Costa Rica, the succulents he'd bought me because I kept killing the more demanding plants. "We need to go through the finances," Sarah said, ever practical. "Joint accounts, lease, all of it." She was right, of course. I pulled out my laptop and started logging into our accounts. That's when I found it. A credit card I didn't know existed, in Justin's name only, with charges that made my stomach turn. Expensive dinners at restaurants he'd told me were client meetings. Hotel charges on days he was supposedly at conferences. A jewelry purchase from 3 weeks ago, and I certainly hadn't received any jewelry. "Sarah," I said, my voice hollow, "look at this." She leaned over, her expression darkening with each line item. $3,000 at Tiffany's? When was this? 3 weeks ago, the day he said he was golf networking with his boss. We kept digging. The more we found, the clearer the picture became. Justin hadn't just decided to leave me on a whim. He'd been planning this, living a double life, spending money we'd been supposedly saving for a house on. What? Who? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Audrey, it's Maria. Can we talk? I'm so sorry about last night. There's something you need to know. I showed Sarah the message. She grabbed the phone from my hand and typed back, come over now. An hour later, Maria stood at my door, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her usually perfect makeup was smudged, her designer outfit replaced with sweats. I didn't know how to tell you. She started before she was even fully inside. I thought you knew. He told me you guys had an open relationship. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah stepped between us, her 5'2" frame somehow intimidating. You better explain yourself right now, Maria. Maria collapsed onto my couch, the same spot where she'd sat dozens of times before, drinking wine and gossiping about her Tinder dates. Now she looked small, deflated, like all the air had been let out of her. It started 3 months ago, she said, not meeting my eyes. At Dave's wedding, you had that stomach flu, remember? Justin and I were both in the wedding party. We got drunk, danced, and he kissed me. I pushed him away, told him he was with you. That's when he said you guys had an arrangement, that you were both seeing other people but keeping it quiet for appearances. My mind raced back to that weekend, the stomach flu that had kept me home while Justin went to the wedding alone. How he'd come back Sunday night, showered immediately, and fallen asleep without saying more than 10 words to me. And you believed him? Sarah's voice was ice. Not at first, Maria said, finally looking up. Her eyes were red, swollen, but he was so convincing. He showed me texts, Audrey, texts from your phone talking about the guys you were seeing. That's impossible, I said. I haven't even looked at another man since. He had your old phone, Maria interrupted. The one you thought you lost at the gym? He'd been using it, creating a fake conversation thread. I should have known. God, I should have known. But I wanted to believe it because she trailed off. Because you wanted him, I finished for her. She nodded miserably. I've had feelings for him for years. I'm not proud of it. I tried to ignore it, to be a good friend. But when he said you guys were open, it felt like permission. Like I wasn't betraying you. Sarah looked like she wanted to throw something. So you've been sleeping with her boyfriend for 3 months? 6 weeks, Maria corrected. I held out for 6 weeks trying to confirm the story. But Justin, he's good at making you believe what he wants you to believe. He showed me the jewelry he bought, said it was a guilt gift for you because he felt bad about the arrangement even though it was supposedly your idea. He made me feel special, chosen. The Tiffany's charge, the $3,000 purchase wasn't for me, it was for her. The night before last, Maria continued, he told me he was going to leave you, that the arrangement wasn't working anymore, that he'd fallen in love with me. He said he was going to do it gently, privately. I had no idea he was planning that horrible display. When I saw him put that box on the table, when I read your face as you opened it, I knew I'd been played too. I stood up and walked to the window, the same spot where Justin had stood last night. The city looked different now, sharper somehow, like someone had turned up the contrast on reality. There's more, Maria said quietly. I think there are others. I turned around slowly. Others? Comments on his Instagram from women I don't recognize. Likes on photos at 3 a.m. A girl at his gym who seemed to know way too much about him when I ran into them once. I think I was just one of several. Sarah pulled out her phone. What's his Instagram? He blocked Audrey this morning. We spent the next hour going through his social media through Sarah's account. The evidence was all there, hidden in plain sight. The subtle flirtations, the inside jokes with women I'd never met, the tagged locations at places he'd never mentioned visiting. I'm pregnant, I said suddenly, the words falling out of my mouth before I could stop them. Maria's face went white. Oh my God, Audrey, you didn't know, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. He didn't know either. I only found out yesterday morning. Are you going to tell him? I thought about it, really thought about it. Justin had made his choice in the cruelest way possible. He'd humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about. He'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. He'd turned my friend into an unwitting accomplice in his betrayal. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I just need him to come get his things and get out of my life. Maria stood up to leave, pausing at the door. I know I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was a victim too, in her own way. Justin had played us both, exploited her feelings and my trust. Maybe, I said, but not today. The next few days blurred together in a haze of lawyer consultations, apartment paperwork, and morning sickness that had decided to arrive with spectacular timing. Sarah had practically moved in, taking time off work to help me navigate the sudden dismantling of my life. It was Thursday when Justin finally texted, coming by Saturday to get my stuff. Please don't be there. The audacity of it made me laugh, actually laugh, for the first time since my birthday. He destroys my life in front of everyone and then wants me to conveniently disappear so he doesn't have to face me? Absolutely not, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. You're going to be here, and so am I. In fact, she pulled out her phone and started texting rapidly. So will everyone else. By Saturday morning, my apartment was full again, but this time with an army of support. Sarah, my sister Emma, who'd driven 3 hours to be here, Tom from Justin's work, who'd apparently called Justin some choice words and chosen my side, and even my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen, who'd brought stress baking in the form of 12 dozen cookies. When Justin's key turned in the lock, the key he should have already returned, his face was priceless. He stood in the doorway, a cardboard box in his arms, staring at the small crowd in what used to be his living room too. What is this? He asked, his confident facade cracking slightly. Moving support, I said from my spot on the couch. I'd positioned myself carefully, casual but composed, wearing the dress he'd always said made me look sophisticated. Your things are in boxes by the door, labeled and everything. I'm nothing if not efficient. Isn't that what you used to say? He set down his box and moved toward the gaming setup. Tom stepped in front of it. That's not yours, mate, Tom said quietly. Audrey bought that for your birthday last year. Receipts right here. He held up the paper. Justin's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. Audrey, can we talk privately? No, I said simply. You gave up the right to privacy when you broke up with me via public humiliation. Get your boxes and go. He started grabbing boxes, checking contents, his movements getting more agitated. Where's my watch? The Rolex? The one I bought you? That's mine. Receipts here too. I held up another paper. Funny thing about living with someone for 5 years, I kept very good records. This is theft, he sputtered. No, this is consequences, Emma said, speaking for the first time. You should leave now. Justin looked around the room, perhaps finally understanding that he'd miscalculated. These people had been his friends too, once. Now they looked at him like he was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. Fine, he said, grabbing the last box. Then he paused, that manipulative look I now recognized crossing his face. Audrey, you know this isn't how I wanted things to end. Maybe we could… Stop, I said, standing up. Just stop. You made your choice. You made it publicly and cruelly. Live with it. He left then, and the sound of the door closing felt different this time. Not like an ending, but like something else. Maybe a beginning. Mrs. Chen broke the silence. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Now, who wants cookies? The room erupted in nervous laughter, the tension breaking like a fever. People started talking, eating, the atmosphere shifting from confrontation to celebration. But I excused myself to the bathroom, where I promptly threw up. Morning sickness or stress? I couldn't tell anymore. As I rinsed my mouth, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired, yes, but also something else. Determined, maybe. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi Audrey, this is Claire. I think we need to talk about Justin. Another woman. Of course there was another woman. I texted back, coffee tomorrow? Whatever Claire had to say, I'd face it. I'd face all of it. Because growing inside me was a reason to be stronger than I'd ever been before. Justin thought I was useless. He had no idea what was coming. Claire looked nothing like Maria. Where Maria was all curves and designer labels, Claire was athletic, understated, wearing running gear and a messy ponytail. She'd suggested we meet at a coffee shop downtown, one of those places with exposed brick and succulents on every table. I'm a personal trainer at Justin's gym, she started without preamble. We've been involved for about 2 months. I stirred my decaf latte, another small reminder of how my life had changed. Let me guess, he told you we were in an open relationship? Her eyes widened. How did you know? You're not the first woman to sit across from me with that story this week. Claire's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, anger, embarrassment, before settling on determination. How many? Including you? 3 that I know of, but I suspect there are more. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then showed me a text thread. He's been love-bombing me for weeks. Look at this. I read the messages, my stomach turning. The same phrases he'd used with me in our early days. The same promises. Even some of the same jokes. It was like he had a script. There's something else, Claire said, taking her phone back. I'm not proud of this, but I did some digging after you texted me. I have a friend who works at his company. She leaned in conspiratorially. Justin doesn't have a promotion. In fact, he's on a performance improvement plan. Has been for 3 months. All those late nights at the office, he's been at bars, my place, wherever. He's about 2 weeks away from being fired. The information should have shocked me, but somehow it just fit the emerging pattern. Everything about Justin's life had been a carefully constructed lie. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because women need to stick together, she said simply. And because I'm angry. He played me, played you, played how many others? He needs to face consequences. What did you have in mind? Claire smiled, and it was slightly terrifying. I have a group chat with about 15 women from the gym. We share info about creepy guys, safety stuff. I think they should know about Justin. By the end of our coffee, Claire and I had exchanged numbers and made a plan. Not for revenge, exactly, but for truth. Justin had built his house of cards on the assumption that his victims would never compare notes. He was wrong. That evening, I sat with Sarah and Emma, my laptop open to an Excel spreadsheet. Yes, I'd made a spreadsheet. 5 years of shared finances needed to be untangled, and I'd found more than just the secret credit card. He's been siphoning money from your joint savings, Emma said, her accountant brain working overtime. Small amounts, but consistently. $200 here, $300 there. Over 3 months, it's almost $4,000. Can we prove it? Every transaction is documented. He transferred it to his personal account, then to another account I can't trace. Probably one he set up for his activities. I touched my still flat stomach absently. This baby would need financial security, and Justin had been stealing from our future. I need a lawyer, I said. Already on it, Sarah said, pulling out a business card. My cousin specializes in family law. She's expecting your call Monday. My phone rang. Maria. I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe accept. Audrey, she said, breathless. I just got a call from Justin. He's panicking. Someone at his gym confronted him about stringing along multiple women. He thinks you're behind it. And? And he's threatening to come over. He sounds drunk. I looked at Sarah and Emma. Justin might be heading here. Emma stood up immediately. I'm calling the police. He's not supposed to have a key anymore, right? I changed the locks yesterday, I confirmed. But I was wrong about him coming over. Instead, my phone lit up with notification after notification. Justin had gone on a social media rampage, posting about how I was a psycho ex who couldn't let go, how I was spreading lies about him, how he'd left me because I was unstable and controlling. The comment section was brutal for him, person after person calling him out, posting screenshots of his messages to various women, creating a timeline of his lies. Claire's gym network had mobilized with military precision. This is beautiful, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. It was, but it was also the moment I realized I had bigger concerns than Justin's public humiliation. I was 8 weeks pregnant, alone, and needed to focus on my future, not his downfall. I'm done, I said, closing my laptop. Let him spiral. I have a life to rebuild. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of place that whispered expensive in every carefully chosen detail. Caroline Reeves, Sarah's cousin, looked like she ate men like Justin for breakfast. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and eyes that missed nothing. So, she said, reviewing my documentation, theft, financial fraud, and potential defamation with those social media posts. You have quite a case. But first, the pregnancy. Have you decided whether to inform him? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks he has a right to know. Part of me thinks he gave up that right when he publicly humiliated me. Legally, you'll need to inform him eventually if you plan to pursue child support, but the timing is up to you. She leaned back in her chair. My advice? Get your ducks in a row first. Secure your finances, establish your support system, then decide. Over the next 3 weeks, I became a person I didn't know I could be. I separated our finances completely, documenting every penny Justin had taken. I met with my HR department about my company's maternity leave policy. I started apartment hunting, realizing I couldn't afford our place on my own. And I went to my first prenatal appointment, Sarah holding my hand as we saw the tiny flutter of a heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. It was after that appointment, sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage, that I finally cried. Not the desperate tears of that first night, but something deeper. Grief for the life I'd planned, fear for the one ahead, and surprisingly, a tiny spark of excitement for this little person I was growing. You okay? Sarah asked. I think I actually am, I said, surprising myself. Or I will be. My phone buzzed, Justin again. He'd been texting sporadically, alternating between anger, bargaining, and what seemed like genuine panic. His latest, Audrey, please, I lost my job. Maria won't talk to me. Claire is telling everyone I'm a predator. This isn't fair. I showed Sarah. She snorted. Fair? He wants to talk about fair? But something in his message stuck with me. He'd lost his job. The performance improvement plan Claire had mentioned must have finally caught up with him. That evening, I got a call from Tom. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Justin came by the office today to clear out his desk. Security had to escort him out. He was not doing well. What do you mean? He looked rough. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes. He kept asking people to vouch for him, to tell HR it was all a misunderstanding. Nobody would even look at him. Word's gotten around about what he did to you, and well, the other women have been pretty vocal on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I hadn't even thought to check there. Sure enough, Claire had written a post about accountability in the age of workplace relationships that didn't name Justin directly, but might as well have included his photo. It had over 500 reactions and dozens of comments from women sharing similar experiences. Justin's professional reputation was destroyed, his personal life was in shambles, the castle he'd built on lies had completely collapsed. That night, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and typed a simple message. We need to talk. Neutral location. Bring a witness if you want. He responded within minutes. Thank you. Saturday, the cafe on 5th, 2 p.m. This isn't a reconciliation, Justin, just a conversation. I understand. But I wondered if he really did. The Justin I'd known, or thought I'd known, would have seen this as an opening, a chance to manipulate his way back in. But maybe losing everything had finally taught him something. Sarah thought I was crazy. Emma thought I was too kind. But sitting with my hand on my growing belly, I knew I had to do this. Not for him, but for me. And for the little person who would someday ask about their father. Saturday came too quickly. I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a table by the window. Public, visible, safe. Sarah sat 2 tables away, pretending to read but watching everything. Justin arrived 5 minutes late. And Tom was right. He looked terrible. The confident, put-together man I'd lived with for 5 years was gone. This person looked haunted, deflated, like he'd aged years and weeks. Hi, he said quietly, sitting across from me. Hi. We stared at each other for a moment, 5 years of history hanging between us like a ghost. I'm sorry, he said finally. I know it doesn't mean anything, doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. The way I ended things. It was cruel. Cowardly. You deserved better. I'd imagined this moment so many times. What I'd say, how I'd react. But now, sitting here, I just felt tired. Why? I asked. Why that way? Why that night? Justin stared at his coffee, unable to meet my eyes. I was scared, he said finally. Things were getting too real. You were talking about houses, about the future, about kids. I panicked. So you decided to hurt me as much as possible? I thought if I made you hate me, it would be easier, cleaner, that you'd move on quickly. He laughed bitterly. I was an idiot. You were seeing 3 other women, Justin. This wasn't about fear of commitment. His head snapped up. 3? How did you? They all reached out to me, compared notes. Did you really think we'd never talk to each other? He slumped in his chair. I don't know what I thought. I wasn't thinking, really. It was like I was addicted to the attention, the newness. Every time things got routine with one person, I'd seek that high somewhere else. It had nothing to do with you, Audrey. You were perfect. That was the problem. Don't, I said sharply. Don't you dare try to make this my fault for being too perfect. That's not what I mean. I didn't feel worthy of you, of the life we were building, so I sabotaged it. Classic self-destruction. He rubbed his face. My therapist has been having a field day with this. You're in therapy? Court ordered, part of my settlement with the company. They agreed not to sue for falsifying timesheets if I got help. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I could see normal people living their normal lives. A couple walked by holding hands, and I didn't feel the stab of jealousy I expected. Just a sort of distant acknowledgement that that would be someone else someday. Not me and Justin, but me and someone who actually deserved me. There's something I need to tell you, I said, pulling the ultrasound picture from my purse. I slid it across the table. Justin picked it up, confused at first. Then understanding dawned on his face, followed by shock. Then something that looked almost like grief. You're pregnant? 11 weeks. Is it? Yes, it's yours. I found out the morning of my birthday party. I was going to tell you that night, after everyone left. He stared at the image, his hands shaking slightly. Oh God, Audrey, I didn't know. If I had known, would it have changed anything? I asked, genuinely curious. He was quiet for a long time. I want to say yes, but honestly, I don't know. I was so far gone in my own stupid spiral, I might have made things even worse. At least he was being honest. What do you want to do? He asked carefully. I'm keeping the baby. I'm moving to a smaller apartment next month, closer to my sister. I have a good support system. I'll be fine. And me? Do I? Am I? That's why we're having this conversation. You can be involved or not, but if you choose to be involved, it's all the way. No halfway, no dropping in and out when it's convenient. This child deserves consistency. I want to be involved, he said quickly. I know I have no right to ask, but please, I've destroyed everything else in my life. Let me try to do this one thing right. I studied him, looking for the manipulator I now knew lived under his surface. But all I saw was a broken man, facing the consequences of his choices. There will be rules, I said. Court-ordered child support, scheduled visitation, co-parenting classes. And Justin, if you ever bring your chaos into this child's life, if you introduce them to random women, if you lie to them or about them, I will make what's happened to you these past weeks look like a picnic. Understood? Understood. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. I know about the money you took from our joint savings. My lawyer will be in touch about repayment. His face paled. Audrey, I'm unemployed. I can't. Then you better find a job quickly. Your child is going to need diapers. I walked out, passing Sarah's table with a small nod. She followed me out, waiting until we were in the car to speak. How do you feel? Like I just did something very adult, I said. I don't know if I like it. She laughed. Welcome to grown-up life. It sucks, but you're doing great. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Justin still sitting at the table, staring at the ultrasound picture. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the note in the silver box, the public humiliation, the months of lies, and the sympathy evaporated. He'd made his choices. Now we all had to live with them. Moving day came on a rainy Thursday in November. My new apartment was smaller, a one-bedroom in a less trendy neighborhood, but it was mine. Emma had driven in to help, along with Sarah, and surprisingly, Tom and a few guys from my office who'd volunteered their trucks and muscles. Where does this go? Tom asked, holding a box labeled kitchen, fragile. Counter is fine, I called back, trying to direct traffic while not lifting anything heavy myself. At 14 weeks pregnant, I was finally starting to show, just a small bump that made my regular jeans uncomfortable. The apartment was already starting to feel like home. I'd painted one wall in the living room, a soft sage green, the color I'd always wanted but Justin had vetoed as too trendy. The nursery corner was marked off with painter's tape, waiting for the crib I'd found on sale. My phone buzzed. Another message from Justin. First co-parenting class was today. It was actually helpful. Thanks for insisting on it. We'd been communicating solely through a parenting app our lawyers had recommended. Everything documented, everything civil. He'd started his court-ordered child support payments even though the baby wasn't born yet, putting money into an account for medical expenses and baby supplies. He'd also gotten a job, nothing fancy, just retail management, but it was steady income. You okay? Sarah asked, noticing me staring at my phone. Yeah, just adjusting to this new normal. The truth was, I was doing better than okay. The morning sickness had finally subsided, my energy was returning, and I'd even started to feel tiny flutters that my doctor said were the first movements. Each day felt like progress, like building something new from the ground up. That evening, after everyone had left and I was alone in my new space, I sat on my secondhand couch. The old one had too many memories, and finally opened the baby name book Emma had given me. "What do you think, little one?" I said to my bump. "Something strong? Something classic?" My phone rang. Maria. We'd been slowly rebuilding our friendship, though it would never be what it was. "How's the new place?" she asked. "Good, different, Mina. I wanted to tell you, I've been seeing someone, a therapist I mean, to work through everything. The Justin situation made me realize I have some issues with self-worth, seeking validation from unavailable men." "That's great, Maria, really. I also wanted to say thank you for not completely cutting me out. I wouldn't have blamed you if you had." After we hung up, I reflected on how much had changed in just 3 months. The life I'd planned was gone, yes, but what was emerging felt more authentic somehow. No more pretending things were fine when they weren't too teen. No more dimming myself to make someone else comfortable. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Chen stood there with a casserole dish and a small gift bag. "Housewarming present," she said, inviting herself in, "and something for the baby." Inside the bag was a tiny hand-knitted blanket in soft yellow. "I started it the day that horrible boy left," she said. "Figured you'd need some good karma." "Mrs. Chen, this is beautiful. Every baby needs a blanket made with love. And honey, this baby is already so loved. I see how your friends rally around you. That's your real family." She was right. My support system had revealed itself in unexpected ways. Colleagues who'd become friends, friends who'd become family, even strangers like Claire who'd become allies. Later that night, I video called my parents in Florida. They'd offered to move closer when the baby came, but I'd told them to wait. I needed to prove to myself I could do this. "The apartment looks great, sweetheart," Mom said. "How are you feeling?" "Strong," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. "Scared sometimes, but strong." "And Justin? He's kind of trying. We'll see." Dad, ever protective, grumbled something about that boy, but Mom shushed him. "You're going to be an amazing mother," she said. "You've already proved you can." December arrived with an unexpected snowstorm and my 20-week anatomy scan. Sarah drove me to the appointment, the roads slick with fresh snow. The waiting room was full of couples, women with their partners reading baby magazines and comparing bump sizes. I felt conspicuous alone, even with Sarah beside me. "Audrey Chen," the technician called. As the wand moved across my belly, now properly round and impossible to hide, the baby appeared on the screen in startling detail. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a perfect profile that made my heart clench. "Would you like to know the gender?" the technician asked. I looked at Sarah, who was already crying. "Yes," I said. "Congratulations, you're having a girl." "A girl? My daughter." The words felt surreal and perfect all at once. "She's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "Look at her little nose." That evening, I sat with the ultrasound pictures spread on my coffee table, trying to process this new information. A daughter, someone who might face the same challenges I had, the same heartbreaks, the same triumphs. My phone buzzed with the scheduled weekly check-in from Justin through the parenting app. "How was the appointment?" he'd written. I hesitated, then typed, "Good. Healthy baby girl. 20 weeks. Measuring right on track." His response came quickly. "A girl. Wow. Thank you for telling me." Then, a few minutes later, "I've been thinking about names. Would you be open to discussing them together?" It was the first time he'd asked for something beyond the bare minimum our agreement required. I thought about it, my hand resting on my bump where our daughter, strange to think of her as ours, was doing her evening gymnastics. "Send me your list. I'll send mine. We can compare." 3 days later, we met at a neutral coffee shop, different from our last meeting place. Justin looked better, healthier. He'd shaved, gotten a haircut, and his clothes were clean and pressed. He looked like someone trying very hard to be worthy of responsibility. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said, pulling out a small notebook. "I know you don't have to include me in these decisions." "She's your daughter too," I said simply. "As long as you're stepping up, you get input." We spent an hour going through names. Some of his suggestions were terrible. "Blade? Really, Justin?" Others surprisingly thoughtful. We both had Zoe on our lists. It meant life, which seemed appropriate for a baby who would be born from the ashes of such destruction. "Can I ask you something?" Justin said as we were wrapping up. "Are you dating anyone?" The question caught me off guard. "That's not your business." "You're right, I'm sorry. I worry about you being alone through this." "I'm not alone," I said firmly. "I have more support than I ever did when we were together. Real support, not the illusion of it." He winced, but nodded. "I deserve that." "This isn't about what you deserve anymore, Justin. It's about what she deserves." I pointed to my bump. "And she deserves parents who can be civil, who can work together, who can put her first. Can you do that?" "I'm trying. The therapy is helping. I'm learning about why I did what I did. Attachment issues, fear of abandonment. So I abandoned first. Classic narcissistic behaviors. It's not an excuse, but understanding it helps me recognize the patterns. I studied him. This man I'd loved for 5 years, had planned a life with, was now having a child with despite everything. I hope you figure it out, for her sake." Christmas came quietly. I'd decided to stay in the city rather than travel to my parents' house. Air travel was uncomfortable, and I was nesting hard. Emma came to stay for a week, turning my apartment into a winter wonderland of decorations. "You need a tree," she declared, dragging me to a tree lot. I'm barely fitting into my winter coat. I don't need a tree." "Your daughter needs a tree. This is her first Christmas." So we got a tree, small, slightly crooked, perfect. As we decorated it with cheap ornaments from Target and lights that only worked if you jiggled the cord just right, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. You're glowing, Emma said, catching me smiling at nothing. I'm happy, I admitted. Despite everything, or maybe because of it, I'm actually happy. My phone rang, Mom wanting to FaceTime and see the tree. As I showed her around my little apartment, pointing out the nursery corner now filled with gifts from my shower, Sarah had thrown me a surprise one at work. I realized this life I was building wasn't just about surviving Justin's betrayal anymore. It was about thriving despite it. Oh honey, Mom said, you've made such a beautiful home. It's small, I said apologetically. It's perfect, it's yours, and it's full of love. That night, as snow fell outside my window, I wrote in the journal I'd started for my daughter. Dear Zoe, 90% sure about this name. Today marks 6 months since everything fell apart, and I want you to know something. You saved me. Not in a pressure-filled way, but in a purpose-filled way. When I found out about you, I had to become someone stronger, braver, better. Your dad and I won't be together, but we'll both love you. Life doesn't always go according to plan, sweet girl, but sometimes the detours lead to exactly where we need to be. Love, Mom. The contractions started at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in March, 2 weeks before my due date. I'd been having Braxton Hicks for weeks, but this was different. A deep, rolling pain that made me grip the bathroom counter and breathe through my teeth. Not yet, little one, I whispered. I haven't finished your baby book. But Zoe, as we'd officially decided to name her, had her own timeline. By 6 a.m., the contractions were regular and intense enough that I called Sarah. It's time, she squealed through the phone. I think so. Can you? Already in my car. The next call was harder. Justin answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for this call for weeks, which, knowing him now, he probably had. I'm heading to the hospital, I said between contractions. Sarah's driving me. I'll meet you there, he said immediately. Thank you for calling me. The hospital was a blur of admission papers, monitors, and well-meaning nurses asking about my birth plan. My birth plan was simple. Get this baby out safely. Everything else was negotiable. Justin arrived as they were setting up the epidural, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. He looked terrified. You can come in, I said, surprising myself. Just stay up by my head. He moved carefully into the room, taking the chair Sarah offered. How are you doing? I'm about to push a human out of my body, Justin. I'm fantastic. He almost smiled. Fair point. The next 8 hours were a marathon of pushing, resting, ice chips, and more pushing. Sarah held one hand, and surprisingly, I let Justin hold the other. Whatever had happened between us, we'd made this little person together, and it seemed right that we'd both be there when she arrived. At 5:47 p.m., Zoe Marie Chen entered the world screaming, all 7 pounds 3 ounces of her, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the entire maternity ward. She's perfect, the doctor announced, placing her on my chest. I looked down at this tiny, wrinkled, absolutely perfect person and felt my heart explode and reconstruct itself all at once. Every terrible thing that had happened in the past 8 months suddenly made sense because it had led to her. Hi, baby girl, I whispered. I'm your mama. Justin was crying, really crying, not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but genuine, overwhelmed, transformative tears. Can I? He started, then stopped. When you're ready, could I hold her? After the nurses had done their checks and I'd had my golden hour of skin to skin, I nodded to the nurse to hand Zoe to Justin. He took her like she was made of spun glass, his hands shaking. Hi, Zoe, he said softly. I'm your dad. I know I messed everything up before you got here, but I promise, I'm going to do better for you. The next few days in the hospital were a strange bubble of cooperation. Justin came for his scheduled visits, bringing decent coffee and takeout from places he remembered I liked. He changed diapers with determined concentration, held Zoe while I showered, and never once overstepped the boundaries we'd established. You're different, I observed on the last day, as he helped load my things into Sarah's car. Therapy twice a week for 8 months will do that, he said. That and losing everything that mattered because I was an idiot. Don't expect I started. I don't, he interrupted gently. I don't expect anything, Audrey. I'm just grateful you're letting me be her dad. Coming home was surreal. My tiny apartment, now fully transformed with baby gear, felt both exactly right and completely foreign. Emma had arrived while I was in the hospital, stocking my freezer with meals and setting up a changing station with military precision. Those first weeks were a blur of feedings every 2 hours, diaper explosions, and the kind of exhaustion that makes you hallucinate. But also, tiny fingers wrapped around mine, milk-drunk smiles, the sweet weight of her sleeping on my chest. Justin came for his visits, 3 times a week for 2 hours, as we'd agreed. He was punctual, respectful, and surprisingly competent. He'd clearly been reading every parenting book he could find. One evening, when Zoe was 6 weeks old, he arrived for his visit looking nervous. I have something to tell you, he said. I've been offered a job, a real job, back in tech. The pay is much better, which means more support for Zoe. That's great, I said, meaning it. It's in Seattle. My heart stopped. What? I haven't accepted it yet. I wanted to talk to you first. I know I have no right to ask, but would you consider? Would you think about relocating? I'd pay for everything. Moving costs, a bigger apartment, help you find a job. I don't want to be a Skype dad. I looked at Zoe, sleeping in her bassinet, then back at Justin. I need time to think. Of course, the offer is open for 2 weeks. After he left, I called Sarah, then Emma, then my parents. Everyone had opinions, but Mom said what I needed to hear. What does your gut tell you? My gut said Seattle was a fresh start, no memories on every corner, better job market, and despite everything, Justin stepping up as a father. 2 days later, I texted him. I'll consider Seattle on 3 conditions. 1. Separate apartments, different neighborhoods. 2. We continue co-parenting therapy. 3. You pay for everything as promised, and I get final say on all decisions about Zoe. Agreed to all, he responded immediately. 3 months later, I stood in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queen Anne, watching the sunset over Puget Sound. Zoe gurgled happily in her bouncy seat, fascinated by the light. Justin lived 20 minutes away in Capitol Hill, close enough to be involved, far enough to maintain boundaries. He came for dinner twice a week, took Zoe on Saturday mornings so I could go to yoga, and never once pushed for more than I was willing to give. Do you ever think about us? He asked one evening, as we watched Zoe attempt to crawl. What we could have been. Sometimes, I admitted, but then I remember what we actually were. This is better, Justin. We're better parents apart than we ever would have been together. He nodded sadly. I know, I just wish I'd been better, that you'd met the version of me that I am now instead of who I was then. That version wouldn't exist without what happened, I pointed out. You needed to lose everything to become someone worth being. On Zoe's first birthday, we threw a party in my apartment. Sarah flew in from California, Emma drove up from Portland, and even Mrs. Chen sent a card. Maria came too, bringing a handmade photo album documenting Zoe's first year. As I watched Justin help Zoe smash her birthday cake, laughing as she painted herself with frosting, I realized something. I'd forgiven him, not for his sake, but for mine, and for Zoe's color-C and Indian. Thank you, I said to him as the party wound down. For what? For becoming the father she deserves. He looked at our daughter, now passed out in her high chair, covered in cake and utterly content. Thank you for letting me try. That night, after everyone had gone home and Zoe was asleep, I stood on my balcony looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed, a dating app notification. I'd finally created a profile at Sarah's insistence. Ready for this? I asked myself. A year and a half ago, Justin had called me useless in front of everyone I knew. Now, I was a mother, a survivor, a woman who'd rebuilt her entire life from scratch. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to set boundaries, to ask for help. I'd discovered strength I didn't know existed. As I swiped through profiles of strangers, I thought about second chances. Not with Justin, that ship had sailed and sunk spectacularly, but second chances at love, at trust, at building a life with someone who would treat Zoe and me with the respect we deserved. My phone rang, a video call from Justin. I answered to see Zoe's face filling the screen, Justin holding the phone for her. Say goodnight to Mama, he coached. Mama! Zoe shrieked, clapping her hands. Good night, baby girl, I said, my heart full. After they hung up, I went inside and opened my laptop. The document was already open. The book I'd started writing about single motherhood, betrayal, and finding strength in unexpected places. The cursor blinked at the end of chapter 12. I began typing. The thing about broken hearts is that they don't actually break. They shatter, yes, they bleed. They ache in ways that make you think you'll never recover. But then, slowly, they rebuild themselves. Not the same as before, stronger. Because a heart that's been broken and healed knows its own power. It knows what it can survive, and it knows that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments we endure. I looked over at Zoe's nursery, where my daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the drama that had preceded her existence. She would grow up knowing she was loved, wanted, fought for. She would know her worth because I'd learned mine. My phone buzzed again. A message from a match on the dating app. Single parent too. Coffee sometime? I smiled and typed back. Coffee sounds perfect. Life was beginning again. Not the life I'd planned, but maybe, just maybe, the life I was meant to have all along.